At a subway station in Korea, the loudspeaker announces that the train to Ogium is about to arrive. Forcing your way through closing doors is a foolish act as the subway train rushes powerfully into the station. Jungkook is already waiting by the door as the announcement continues. If this entrance is too crowded, please move to another door to board. The train stops, and two people slowly step inside. The girl says, "Jungkook, sit over there." The boy wearing a hat gently stops her, saying, "Well, reach the station before the seat even warms up." The girl turns to Jungkook and says irritably, "Just sit and rest for a bit." Jungkook slowly thinks to himself, "Work is finally done. It's rare for me to get the chance to visit my hometown." He walks over and sits between them. The boy asks, "Did you forget? That time you were kicked straight into the forest." The girl sitting on the other side laughs and replies, "Of course, I remember," sitting awkwardly between them like a temple between two markets. The boy says, "If you had seen the old man's painful expression back then, that would have been priceless." The girl replies, "That old swindler." The atmosphere inside the carriage grows gloomier. He sits there alone, thinking, in reality, there is no reunion, only me. Alone with imaginary memories of family. His eyes glance at a little boy happily running toward his mother, shouting, "Mom!" The mother scolds him, "Little brat, don't run around in public places." The boy pouts and says, "But there's no one here, Mom." The mother continues, "Whether the place is crowded or not, rules are still rules." The train slowly moves through the tunnel. Jungkook remains sitting silently in his seat, waiting. Even his hand is a train keychain. He thinks, but what subway could there possibly be here? I am just sitting alone at home, imagining the whole subway ride in my head. He looks toward the place where the light shines through, as if seeing the skeleton of a friend. The skeleton remains slumped quietly by the edge of the wall. He thinks, and actually, this isn't even my house. This place is Jungkook quietly looks at the scene outside. He is sitting inside a ruined building with shattered glass windows, and the world outside is even more devastating. He thinks, this damn apocalyptic world. The old man said that 40 years ago, before I was even born, everything was beautiful. It was an unusually peaceful era, yet disaster suddenly fell from the sky. Black pillars, countless unidentified black pillars like distant stars, began entering the atmosphere one after another. Strange black pillars descended from nowhere, and ruins rained down like falling debris. The people living on Earth were filled with endless terror. Those who were unfortunate lost their lives because of their appearance. Jungkook suddenly comes back to his senses after a moment of distraction. The keychain in his hand suddenly drops and rolls across the ground. That's the end of it. Only ruins remain, and a few barely surviving people. Of course, the old man's story sounds like complete nonsense. When I was little, his stories sounded like fairy tales, but this part is something I just can't accept. He picks up the keychain from the ground and thinks, subway. Stuffing a bunch of human lives into a tiny iron box, packed together like clams. Isn't that basically telling people to go die? They say the old world was peaceful, so that kind of thing was possible. The more he thinks about it, the more ridiculous it sounds. He curses under his breath. Nonsense. Peace. My ass. Where would you even find that now? Anyone preaching morality these days is definitely a scammer. But still, I'd like to try riding a train at least once, just to know what it feels like. Racing through a deep dark tunnel must feel amazing, probably like traveling through space or time. His stride suddenly stops, his eyes turning serious as he thinks. Footsteps. He quickly finds a place to hide, his whole body shifting into a defensive stance. From the sound of those footsteps, calculations arise instinctively. That steady rhythm probably. Soldiers. 3 of them, no. 2. The more he thinks about it, the stranger it seems. Jungkook thinks, stragglers? What can they even do wandering around like this? Everyone just minds their own business and passes each other like strangers. One of the stragglers suddenly stops and looks toward the place where he is hiding. That guy suddenly raises his hand to signal the other. Jungkook thinks irritably, did they already notice my traces? Then he sighs as if accepting his fate. So be it. From behind the rocks, he slowly stands up, scaring the 2 men out of their wits. Someone. The other one is calmer and reassures the first. Calm down, boss. Straggler 1 calmly points and says, look at the state he's in. Straggler 2 sighs in relief and replies, so it's just a courier. With a careless expression, Jungkook asks, why are you guys scaring yourselves like that? Straggler 1 asks, courier, what's your job? Delivering useless paper. Still relaxed with both hands in his pockets, he replies, I am delivering an air raid warning. Mail delivery was finished ages ago. His gaze casually sweeps over the two of them as he thinks, let's see. You must have been beaten pretty badly, huh? Only two of you left? Straggler 1 replies. Air raid warning, huh? That's a tough job. Jungkook continues guessing, thinking they probably followed his footprints for a reason. Straggler 2 hurriedly speaks up from behind. Sorry, courier. Still wearing that careless smile, Jungkook asks, what's wrong? Starving already? I've got some spare food. Straggler 1 honestly asks, really? A cunning glint appears in Jungkook's eyes as he asks, got anything valuable to trade? Then he thinks, let's see what you've got. Hearing that, Straggler 1 hurriedly rummages through his belongings, as if afraid Jungkook might change his mind. Of course I do. Bandages, hygiene supplies, batteries, and oh, almost forgot, even rare antibiotics. Straggler 1 almost offers everything as he asks, what do you want to trade for, Mr. Courier? But the reply comes cold and absolute. Ammo. Jungkook seems completely in control, smiling like the god of death, leaving Straggler 1 confused. What? He replies indifferently. Ammunition? Hearing that, Straggler 2 angrily says, are you blind? Can't you see this? We use 5.56 millimeters. Jungkook replies indifferently. It's not like I am using it myself, leaving Straggler 1 confused. Huh. Jungkook continues speaking calmly. As a courier, I can't carry heavy stuff. Ammo is the best deal. Small, compact, and valuable. Straggler 1 stubbornly continues negotiating. If that's the case, antibiotics or batteries are valuable too. Jungkook refuses bluntly. No, I only take ammo. Straggler 2 nods in agreement but says, I get what you mean, but we also need ammo to stay alive. Jungkook plays his final move. Alright then. He then takes out a bottle of water and a bag of food from his pocket and says, just one bullet and I'll give you all these supplies. Straggler 2 exclaims in shock. One lousy bullet and you take all this? Jungkook smiles provocatively. No bargaining. Exactly one bullet. Hearing that, Straggler 1 hurriedly says, no, that won't do. If the antibiotics aren't enough, I'll throw in a lighter too. The lighter is already filled with fuel but hasn't even been struck yet. Like a venomous snake, Jungkook cuts him off, leaving no way out. Is a single bullet really that precious to you? Through the reflective lenses, his irritating smile can be seen. After hearing that, Straggler 1 becomes completely dejected. The smile never leaves Jungkook's lips. His eyes curved with amusement as he says, if it's not because it's rare, then... His gaze sharpens, and the hint of laughter disappears from his eyes. Then he says something that makes the two men jump in shock. Your guns are completely out of bullets, aren't they? Startled like a guilty man, Straggler 1 grips his gun tightly, points it straight at Jungkook, and shouts, you brat want me to show you whether my magazine's empty or not. Even with a gun pointed at him, Jungkook's teasing attitude doesn't fade. Smiling, he says, we're both part of the same system. Why so tense? Straggler 1 shouts, shut up. We've got no way out anyway, got that? What can a lowly courier like you possibly do? Behind the glasses, a chilling cruelty appears. Jungkook replies with complete nonchalance, calling me useless, huh? That hurts my pride a little. But about that no way out thing, standing in front of the two of them, he calmly says, I thought you were stragglers. Turns out you're deserters. Ah, no. Now you should be called highway robbers. The more he hears, the angrier Straggler 1 becomes. He rushes forward and shouts, you bastard. But Jungkook easily dodges and says calmly, acting like this is basically admitting it. With a spin, he powerfully strikes Straggler 1 inch the face and coldly says, you really are out of bullets, aren't you? The kick is so strong that it even shatters Straggler 1's second glasses. Right behind him, Straggler 2 pulls out a dagger, preparing to attack from behind. A slash of the knife is launched. But with his agile body, he dodges perfectly and says, trying to aim for my neck. The unexpected turn of events leaves Straggler 2 frozen in shock. Jungkook doesn't forget to mock him, and your moves are way too clumsy. Without any wasted movement, he flips and delivers a kick to the man's head. His strong hand lands firmly on the ground. Still dazed, Straggler 2 curses, just a trash courier. And you dare. Before he can recover, Jungkook rushes toward Straggler 2 like an arrow and says, you've been mocking the courier job this whole time. Straggler 3 swings his knife and thrusts it toward him. Jungkook quickly blocks it with his hand, and sparks even fly from the point of contact. This horrifying scene leaves Straggler 2 stunned. Before he can recover, Jungkook swiftly throws a punch at him and says, "That's you guys. You're discriminating against couriers?" A thunderous punch lands and sends Straggler 2 flying dozens of meters away. Straggler 2 coughs violently and shouts angrily, "Hey, that thing you're holding? Someone like you, a courier, actually managed to steal an officer's shield? Beneath that thin layer of clothing is one of the world's most advanced weapons." Jungkook still looks carefree, glancing at the shield in his hand and saying, "The critical spot got scratched." He slowly walks toward Straggler 2 and demands compensation, saying, "How are you going to pay for this?" Straggler 2 backs away in fear and says, "Hey, if you get caught, you'll be tied to a post." Jungkook calmly replies, "Whatever. But what about other types of bullets?" Jungkook casually slips his hand inside his coat and says, "For example, something like this," and he pulls out a gun. Seeing this, Straggler 2 is horrified. "A hunter's pistol? Who the hell are you?" Jungkook casually brushes his hair and replies, "Me?" Smiling mockingly at Straggler 2, he says, "Can't you tell just by looking? I am just an ordinary courier." After the tough battle, Jungkook quietly stands there, sewing his clothes and mutters, "When I get back to headquarters, I'll definitely get scolded again." After finishing the patch, he shakes the coat and says, "A quick fix like this should hold up, right?" Putting his coat back on coolly, he says, "At least I squeezed repair money out of those guys. Looking at this tear on the shield, I should have taken even more from them." After finishing fixing his clothes, Jungkook glances behind him and says, "All right then, let's keep moving." He strides silently while the sky rumbles with an approaching storm, 3 hours before the airstrike. Jungkook quietly stands in front of a base when a guard stops him. "Stay right there." The guard in a yellow uniform grips his gun tightly and says, "I said, stay still." One guard asks, "Who is it?" The yellow uniform guard replies, "A courier? I didn't hear anything about mail today." Jungkook says nothing and simply holds out his identification paper. The guard tightens his grip on the gun and says, "Don't tell me." Jungkook quickly answers, "Airstrike warning. About 2 hours and 40 minutes left." Hearing that, the yellow uniform guard turns in shock and says, "An airstrike warning from a courier?" The other guard replies, "It is part of their duty, but I've never seen anyone actually do it before. If he appears, it means a massive strike is about to fall." Standing below them, Jungkook shouts, "Can you keep it down for a second?" He says tiredly. "Should I just pull the alarm bell?" Jungkook grabs the red device in his hand. Seeing that, the guard hurriedly says, "Wait, call the captain here." Immediately, the yellow uniform guard quickly replies, "Yes, sir." The massive gate slowly opened. The guard slowly opened the small hatch in the door, stepped outside cautiously, and said, "Courier, come in." Jungkook quietly followed behind him and walked in. He silently observed his surroundings, as if doing it casually. The upper level was reinforced with solid metal. He thought, "A steel roof. No wonder they've managed to hold out for so long." In the distance, people inside the base were whispering anxiously, "The alarm has been raised. Should we retreat?" Another person stopped them. "Wait, are you sure he's really a courier?" Kyuge stood among the crowd, staring at him blankly. Someone said, "Damn it, this day has finally come." Another replied, "I'll stay." Jungkook also caught his gaze. The guard walking ahead continued, "I've brought him here," then greeted, "Captain." He raised his eyes to look and thought, so that person is the leader of this shelter. When entering a shelter for the first time, there are a few things you should remember. First, learn their rules. When transportation and communication have completely collapsed, the only thing connecting people is the courier. The survivors build their own beliefs in order to survive, and from those beliefs, their rules are born. So if you're not asked, don't speak. The captain stood against the light, looking rather fierce, reached out his hand and said, "Hey, courier." But he then hospitably patted Jungkook on the shoulder and said, "The trip here must have been tough, right? Have something to drink, follow me. I don't want the people here to panic." "Will a black pillar really fall here?" He leaned against the counter, handed the documents to the man, and said, "About 2 hours from now." "That's the government's prediction." The captain looked at the lines of text on the paper and said, "I don't really understand these numbers, but..." He placed it on the table and seriously asked, "You know what these numbers mean, right? What are the chances this shelter survives the airstrike?" Jungkook replied flatly, "I don't know. Ask an expert. I am just a courier." The captain stubbornly tried to probe for information. You must have seen many airstrikes already. Jungkook turned around and firmly denied it. I told you. I don't know. The man persisted. Really? Jungkook coldly replied, I don't know. Seeing his uncooperative attitude, the guard angrily said, Damn it, say that again and get out of here. But the captain quickly stopped him. Calm down. Jungkook closed his eyes to rest and thought. Rule number 2. Do not interfere. He placed his bag on the ground, squatted down and said, Even if I wanted to go back, I still have work to do. The captain asked curiously. Official business? He replied vaguely. Something like that. Then he took out a strange device. The man asked, What is that? He replied, A device to measure the impact force of the black pillar when it falls. It compares the headquarters predictions with the real data. The man looked blankly at the ceiling and said, But we built a roof to defend against airstrikes. Wouldn't that make the results inaccurate? He quietly set up the device and explained, According to the experts, the black pillar doesn't simply fall. It's like a living creature. When it enters the atmosphere, it slows down by itself and then falls exactly at the predetermined coordinates, whether there is a roof or not. So the only thing I can say is, there are 1 hour and 50 minutes left. What are you going to do? As soon as Jungkook finished speaking, the captain's expression became even more serious. Walking out of the reception room, he stood before a crowd and thought, This scene always happens whenever an outsider like me arrives. People pushed and squeezed toward him to meet him. He thought, the residents have started bringing out items to trade. An old man holding a bottle of water called out. Courier, a little girl with muddy feet also said, Mr. Courier, but what I need is just... He suddenly raised his hand and said, Does anyone have bullets? The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. He thought with certainty. Just as expected. Someone from afar spoke up. Sorry, Courier. I don't have bullets, but if you're willing to trade for this, a grenade was handed to Jungkook, surprising him. His steps stopped when he heard the captain call out, Courier, why did you take the grenade when you're not even sure it will explode? Jungkook held it tightly in his hand and said, It's not antibiotics, just bandages, so I got it cheap, and, my eyes can tell, it works. By the way, why haven't you left yet? The man rested his hands on his hips and replied wearily, I am staying. Maybe that roof might actually block the black pillar. His tone suddenly changed, sounding somewhat pleading. More importantly, I have something I want to ask of you. He asked curiously. Ask what? Kyong Hi suddenly appeared with a rifle on her back and cheerfully said, Hello, Mr. Courier, my name is Kyong Hi. I saw you earlier. She continued, Since you're about to return to headquarters, but suddenly he cut her off. He then glared and turned to ask the captain, What is this? The man scratched his head and replied awkwardly, The girl said she has a package to send and wants to follow you. If it goes straight to headquarters, the fee is cheaper, right? Jungkook turned to Kyong Hi in shock and disbelief and asked, You just need to hand it to me. Why do you have to follow? Then, as if accepting fate, he said, Forget it. The only thing allowed to follow me is my shadow. Hearing that, she happily replied, Then it'll follow like your shadow, he added. It sticks to you because you can't take it off. Can you remove it for me? Kyong Hi quickly grabbed a flashlight, turned it on, and shone it on Jungkook's shadow. Seeing that, he quickly snatched the flashlight away and shouted, Are you really going to waste batteries on this? Are you crazy? She stammered. But the shadow. He cut her off. No. Kyong Hi quickly handed a magazine of bullets to Jungkook and said, Then I'll give you this. That action stunned him as if seeing something rare for the first time. He thought, Bullets? The captain standing beside them helplessly held his forehead and said, Kyong Hi, that girl is really troublesome. She innocently asked, Why? He replied, Those bullets. Kyong Hi innocently replied, A courier is someone trustworthy, right? Jungkook bent down to pick up the magazine and thought, This place doesn't look rich enough to give bullets to a child. The top round was genuine military-grade ammunition, and the magazine was nearly full. He fell into silence, his eyes shifting uncertainly. Looking toward the two of them, he thought, That captain. Jungkook held the magazine in his hand and said, If you pay with these bullets, I can deliver the package for you. The captain quickly replied, No, take Kyong Hi back to headquarters. He asked, What about you? The man answered with conviction, This is my home, he replied proudly. Someone has to stay and guard it. I can't let Kyong Hi risk her life here. He looked over the base area, just houses after all. The lonely figure replied, even if it's lost, it can be rebuilt. Then he quietly left, not forgetting to say, follow me. Kyong Hi looked back at the captain reluctantly and replied, yes, sir. She stood outside in a daze. Jungkook urged, hurry up, the airstrike is coming soon. Kyong Hi softly asked, Mr. Courier, can that roof really block the airstrike? He answered honestly, no. She asked in confusion. Huh. Then why didn't you tell them? Jungkook walked ahead and replied, 2 reasons. First, those who don't want to leave will stay, no matter what I say. She continued. And the second? He quietly looked at the airstrike in the sky and said, in this world, there's something called a 1 in a million probability. Maybe with just one stroke of luck they could survive. He thought lonely, just like I once did. 30 minutes earlier, the airstrike happened. Outside, the sky was filled with smoke and fire, streaks of blazing red covering the entire sky. Inside the house, someone spoke up and asked, Leader, aren't you going to let everyone evacuate? The captain sat at the corner of the table, lowered his head and said, this roof has protected us for many years. It should be fine this time too. The person across from him spoke, but the one who said that was drinking a bottle of wine that had been carefully stored for many years. He said to the guard sitting across from him holding a glass of wine, drink. The guard asked the captain, that courier? Did he say anything else? The man did not answer, only lowered his head and hummed in acknowledgement. His eyes carried a trace of sadness as he fell into thought. A shelter like this can always be rebuilt at any time. The captain fiddled with the empty cup in his hand and said, no matter what he said, only he understands what he truly meant. The guard asked again, Leader, is there anything left to eat? He replied, there's still some dried meat. Then he reached his hand down and continued, I brought a few things with me. Elsewhere, a child was stubbornly chewing on a tough piece of meat in their mouth. Jungkook looked at Kyong Hi nibbling and sighed. It's like a bottomless bag. Things just keep coming out of it. Who knows from where? She looked up and asked, Mr. Courier, do you want some? He replied, I am fine. Then he rummaged through the leather pouch at his side. He carefully counted the bullets and thought, a magazine holds 30 rounds in total, but the top bullet was a different type, which means at least 1 round was missing. Jungkook glanced back thoughtfully. The leader would never remove a round before giving the magazine to a child. He silently speculated. So that means... Suddenly Kyong Hi's words cut through his train of thought. Thank you for keeping your promise. Jungkook was surprised. Huh. She sat facing the wall and said, the leader said the courier works for the government so he can be trusted. But I still thought maybe he would just take the bullets and leave me behind. Jungkook replied to her, there's no such thing as abandoning or keeping you. You chose to follow me yourself. I didn't stop you. Jungkook suddenly turned his head, but she cut him off and said, I still want to thank you properly. With a bright smile, she thanked him. Thank you, Mr. Courier, but her hand gesture was not as polite as her words. Jungkook's face showed irritation. He looked at Kyong Hi and asked, hey kid, what does that finger gesture mean? She replied innocently, huh? Where I am from it means thank you. Jungkook slapped his forehead, sighed, and said, listen carefully, kid. Kyong Hi's face showed annoyance as she muttered, my name is Kyong Hi. Jungkook humored her, yeah, kid. Then he explained to her, gestures have different meanings in each shelter. Right now you're outside your own territory, so you have to follow the rules out here. Jungkook held her hand and said, from now on, if you run into a situation like this, he shaped Kyong Hi's hand into a thumbs up and instructed, do it like this. Her eyes looked at her hand with curiosity. Suddenly a sound made Kyong Hi jump in fright. Jungkook, on the contrary, calmly looked up and said, it's time. At that moment the sky was tangled with thunder and lightning. He crouched down, pulled Kyong Hi's hood up, and instructed, cover your ears. It's going to be very loud. She replied softly, okay. Jungkook suddenly murmured, the sky is nurturing a silent fury. He continued, then black pillars will pin into the ground like giant nails. Kyong Hi turned to him and asked curiously, what are those? Jungkook replied, that's the question someone asked after seeing those black pillars fall from the sky. His voice blended with the thunder under the gloomy sky. Dozens of years had passed since the old era collapsed, and the reason the world still had not recovered was because of them. Jungkook remembered the devastation after the battles and said, they seem almost conscious, only targeting key facilities and destroying them. The only place on this land that doesn't have to fear airstrikes is the headquarters and... Kyong Hi listened silently as Jungkook spoke, The geological front deep underground, she asked in confusion. The geological front? Jungkook murmured. It's here. In the distance, a flash of light streaked across the sky. Something glossy black was falling toward the ground out of control. In an instant, the entire sky turned dark, and several gusts of wind swept across it. Outside where Kyong Hi and Jungkook were sitting, everything seemed to be turning upside down. Jungkook walked through the thick white smoke and thought to himself, this girl's shelter is really unlucky. The silhouettes of one tall and one small figure blurred in the dust. Jungkook thought, not every airstrike drops such an absurdly huge pillar. He tightened the strap of his bag and thought, the purpose of coming back here was to retrieve the measuring device. In an era where building a communication system was almost impossible, he looked around at the devastation with a bit of regret. Devices with transmission cores like the measuring instrument were extremely rare assets, Jungkook said. But recovering it isn't guaranteed. He pulled down his collar and turned to Kyong Hi, saying, kid, we're done here. Let's head back to headquarters. Seeing her fumbling around on the ground, he asked, what are you doing? Kyong Hi did not answer his question and remained silent. Seeing that she did not answer, Jungkook urged, let's go. Only then did Kyong Hi softly reply, yes. In the city, everything was in ruins. Houses had collapsed, and chunks of concrete were scattered everywhere. The two walked silently along the road. Kyong Hi walked behind him, her face already covered in tears. After a few steps, her small head suddenly bumped into his back. Kyong Hi looked up in surprise and asked, Mr. Courier? Jungkook did not turn back to look at Kyong Hi. He simply said, the black pillars themselves are already disasters. But if there's one rare good thing about them, Kyong Hi widened her eyes in surprise as she heard him say, after every airstrike. Kyong Hi's eyes no longer held tears. Instead, a sparkling light shone within them. Kyong Hi looked up at the star-filled sky. Jungkook's words still echoed in her ears. The starry sky appeared clearer than at any other time. Jungkook crouched down in front of her and comforted Kyong Hi. So you see, not everything is bad. Kyong Hi asked him, are you trying to comfort me? Kyong Hi watched Jungkook stand up and walk ahead. He hurriedly denied it. Comfort you? I hate all that crying stuff. We still have a long way to go. And crying only wastes energy. A faint smile suddenly appeared on her lips. Then she trotted after him and asked, hey, Mr. Courier, why do you do this job? Jungkook replied indifferently. What a stupid question. To survive, obviously, she continued asking. Don't you have any dreams? After that, Kyung Hae's voice kept chirping on by itself. What about you then? What kind of letter is so important that you have to work this hard? I still haven't heard your story. Mr. Courier. Jungkook gave in and said, so annoying. Fine. I'll show you this. Seeing Jungkook take out a keychain, Kyung Hae curiously asked, what is that? He smiled brightly and replied, have you ever heard of a subway? It's something used to carry people everywhere. She looked at the thing in Jungkook's hand and said suspiciously, but with this size you could even fit it in your mouth. The real one must be much bigger. This is just a model. He shook his head and said, try to imagine it. As he spoke, Jungkook imagined it, carrying hundreds of people running underground. A subway line could take you anywhere you want. It's a relic of the old era. But one day I want to try riding it. Kyung Hae looked at him, smiled softly, and said, you're much more naive than you look, Mr. Courier. Instead of answering her, he suddenly asked, all right. More importantly, how long do you plan to hide it? Kyung Hae looked at him in surprise and blurted out, huh? Jungkook exposed her, saying, stop pretending. The magazine the leader gave you. You hid a bullet inside it, didn't you? Looking down at Kyung Hae, he thought to himself, I am not petty enough to take the bullet you hid. But I need to pressure you so you stay quiet for a while. Kyung Hae stammered in reply, I ate it already. Jungkook was shocked. What? He suddenly became agitated and said, what do you mean? Are you crazy? Why would you swallow that? Kyung Hae hurriedly explained, I am sorry. I already ate all the dried meat. There was nothing else left. Jungkook was shaken inside. I know kids can eat all kinds of random things, but you have quite a few bad habits that need fixing. He held her shoulders and softly called, Kid, Jungkook instructed. Next time if you're hungry, tell me. I can share some food with you. Suddenly she called out, Mr. Courier. Jungkook held her as she trembled in fear in his arms, still calling him, Mr. Courier. Jungkook said, don't move, she asked curiously. Huh? Jungkook thought, the collapse of this world wasn't caused only by the airstrikes. Looking ahead, he worried silently. Those black monsters born from those pillars. There might be more of them around here. As Jungkook dashed toward the door, he thought, so ill, deal with it in the quietest way possible. Without making any sound, Jungkook had just stepped out. The creature seemed to have noticed him and turned its gaze back. His eyes widened as he looked behind him, and he saw her holding a gun in her hands, her face blank with confusion. Several bullets were fired continuously from the gun's muzzle. Jungkook looked at Kyong Hi behind him in shock. Hearing the gunshots, he looked at her and thought, this girl is really cunning. Looking at those sharp eyes, a suspicion rose in his mind. She had been hiding her cards carefully from the very beginning. He gritted his teeth and muttered a few words. What an idiot. After a moment of silence, the monsters rushed forward one after another. Jungkook spun swiftly and severed the head of a monster. While fighting, he gritted his teeth and worried inside. There's still another monster. Jungkook saw a monster approaching Kyong Hi. Filled with killing intent, he immediately rushed forward. Suddenly he looked up, his eyes filled with shock. The sharp spike on the monster's body had pierced through Kyong Hi's body. As the spike was pulled out, her whole body staggered and fell backward. Jungkook hurried over while calling out, Kid. Placing her on the ground, he scolded, I told you to stay still. I only have one knife. Was that still not enough for you? Jungkook looked at Kyong Hi lying there, his gaze stern. Why lie? Didn't the leader already teach you how to survive? Blood flowed from Kyong Hi's mouth as she weakly said, You always have to keep a trump card, but you're really something too. With just one knife, you cleared all those monsters anyway. Stop arguing. Jungkook pressed his lips tightly and stared at her. He reached out his hand. While tending to her, Jungkook worriedly thought to himself, the chance of survival is only 0.9%. All the medicine is gone. Is this all the hope that's left? Worse. The gunshots will attract more of them. If we run into another one with a core, I am done for. Jungkook frowned in frustration, thinking, damn it, it's because you shouted so loudly. But now whether there are many or few doesn't matter anymore. Kyong Hi weakly spoke up. I know. Her face was pale without a trace of color, as Kyong Hi weakly said word by word. It's impossible, no matter how you calculate it, but I have a favor to ask you. She handed him a letter and asked, You said I could register it directly, right? Jungkook asked in confusion. This letter? She explained. Mr. Courier, please accept it for me. He looked at the letter and read the sender's name aloud. Sender. Park Kyung Hi, Bogeum Jari, Gyeonggi Province. Then he read the recipient's name. Recipient. Yeongdeungpo District. Seoul. Hearing that, Kyong Hi weakly objected. No, that's not the place. Kyong Hi murmured. I am willing to trade my life for it, please. Help me. Looking into the distance as the monsters began approaching again, Jungkook cursed under his breath. Damn it, they're coming. Kyong Hi softly said, Mr. Courier, the thing you traded for in Bogeum Jari, do you still have it? He asked back. What thing? She smiled brightly at him and even hooked her finger. Consider it the shipping fee, but you have to promise me. Several monsters had already noticed her direction. Lying on the ground, Kyong Hi gently reached out her hand and thought, Mr. Courier. Several monsters gathered around where she lay, staring fixedly at her. Lying on the ground with a grenade in her hand, Kyong Hi thought, Promise me. I'll use the grenade you got from Bogeum Jari to lure them. She glanced to the side. Looking at the figure hiding in the corner, she silently prayed in her heart. So please. She looked at Jungkook's face and silently pleaded, Please deliver this letter for me. She smiled at him while thinking, Thank you. Jungkook suddenly felt a bit uneasy at Kyung Hi's smile. As she raised the grenade, she kept repeating in her heart, Mr. Courier. A dazzling flash burst out from where she was lying. A thunderous explosion rang out as the light spread outward. As the blinding light faded, only scattered fragments of remains were left on the ground. The bird-shaped monster lay on the ground with its eyes wide open. Jungkook reached down and dug something out from the monster's head. He pulled out a glowing white glass sphere. Jungkook sighed. As expected, there really was a monster with a core. Facing the devastated scene, he simply stood there silently, staring ahead. He looked up at the empty sky and murmured to himself, Looks like I am going to lose sleep for a long time. The new government complex. Jungkook walked over leisurely with his hands in his pockets. Director before anyone else greeted him with a bright smile. Jungkook. I finished my work, so I came back here. Seeing that Jungkook was not in a good mood, he asked, You look exhausted. Did something happen? Jungkook replied, Come on, Director, before anyone else, as if that would happen. I am the shipper of the month. He suddenly said, Right, Jungkook. There's an emergency meeting later about a special mission. Be there. Jungkook tried to refuse. I am really worn out today. Director, before anyone else, patted his back and said, Don't be like that. Just come. I guarantee you'll love it. Hearing that, Jungkook reluctantly agreed. All right then. Whatever. In the meeting room, Director, before anyone else, spoke first. Since everyone's here, let's begin. Sitting quietly in the meeting room with his head lowered, Jungkook listened as he said, Look at these pictures I am showing. Jungkook narrowed his eyes, his expression slightly absent-minded. He recalled the moment she introduced herself. My name is Kyong Hi, kid. Jungkook remembered holding Kyong Hi's hand while explaining, every place has its own sign. So from now on, if you end up in a situation like this, he remembered his own instruction. For, thank you, make a sign like this. Suddenly a hand was raised and a voice spoke up. I have a question. The person on the podium replied, Go ahead. The man in front of him voiced his question. With this much cargo, well, have to use vehicles, right? Director, before anyone else, replied, This is still an internal secret, but I'll reveal it to you. He pointed to the paper on the board and explained, This is the planned route. The other person objected. That route isn't passable. Director, before anyone else, smiled slightly and said, No, it's still possible. Because, Jungkook's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard Director, before anyone else, say, the subway line. The final words made him even more surprised. It's already being restored. Jungkook thought to himself, a subway network. Someone stood up to analyze. The ultimate goal is to transport tons of military equipment through transit stations. And to operate this plan, we are secretly restoring the underground rails. The man in the white shirt concluded the task. Before launching, all preparations must be completed. And regarding that support, the four-eyed man seriously reminded them, Listen, this operation is only for capable individuals. He continued frankly, This mission is like a capability test, to filter out those worthy of being recruited. The four-eyed man also revealed to the trainees, the reward for those who take part in this operation is. Jungkook was a bit distracted. Wait, which department does that officer belong to? I've never seen his face before. He gave everyone a choice. Now then, anyone who wants to contribute, please move to the room next door immediately. His eyes lit up. I never considered this before. But maybe this time I actually will. Holding a model keychain in his hand, Jungkook got to see a subway station with his own eyes. He was extremely excited. No, maybe he'll even get to ride it. The four-eyed man suddenly stopped. Jungkook, you're an exception. He clearly called out his full name. Woo Jungkook. The door slammed shut. He angrily demanded an explanation. What does this mean? I want to go to the next room. The four-eyed man brought up a new task. I received direct orders to assign this job to you. Woo Jungkook. Jungkook doubted life itself. I just arrived, and you already know my full name? My instincts say this isn't good. He spoke directly. Here's your task. You'll be responsible for this area. Woo Jungkook. With just one glance he recognized it. Jeomcheon District. That's a government resettlement area. Deliveries there are easy. Why give me such an easy, high-paying job? A male classmate had reminded Jungkook. Right, Jungkook. There's a meeting later about a special mission. Make sure you attend. He realized the reason. Maybe director before anyone else interfered and forced me to come. Jungkook could only nod in agreement. My achievements are also Director Bei's reputation. Did he push me to a safe place to keep me alive? Fine. I get it. Let's start. The four-eyed man suddenly changed his mind. No. I already gave this job to someone else. Jungkook was confused. What? Jungkook felt puzzled. You showed me all that and now you say you gave it to someone else? The man replied helplessly. Because I was ordered to explain everything to you. Woo Jungkook. Nothing could fool him. You were also ordered to persuade me to take this job. Right? The four-eyed man confirmed. Exactly. But personnel assignment is my authority. Jungkook finally understood. So you went on and on explaining all that, and then you won't even let me do it? He replied briefly. Exactly. Which annoyed Jungkook. What kind of ridiculous game is this? The four-eyed man was quite surprised. Woo Jungkook, I've thoroughly checked your background. It's completely spotless. Jungkook calmly replied, So what if it's clean? I may have made a few small mistakes, but have never been involved in anything big. He became suspicious. The problem is that your record is too clean, as if you were a nobody before becoming a shipper. The four-eyed man saw through the situation. Someone whose background is hidden that well is either top tier, he expressed his opinion, or someone with very powerful backing. And I really hate people in this field who only rely on connections. Jungkook spoke bluntly. Are you mocking me? The four-eyed man deliberately avoided it. I didn't say you were that type. He quickly made an excuse to cover it up. I am just introducing myself. I hate people who don't play fair. You seemed curious about me, so I told you. He immediately changed the subject. Anyway, since I became a shipper, you must have read my file, right? The four-eyed man had indeed checked. You've never lost your top ranking. Jungkook smirked proudly. Seems like you've got a good eye, the man replied sarcastically. You've never taken any tough jobs, only small tasks, and every time you handled them neatly. The four-eyed man solemnly declared, this operation is only for the most outstanding individuals selected. Jungkook questioned back, you don't trust my abilities just because I've never taken suicide missions. He implied confirmation. Something like that. The four-eyed man had no time to explain. Sorry, I have an urgent call. Let's assume you understand now. He quickly walked away. Yes, I'll pay the highest shipping fee. It's just a letter. If it's lost, it can be rewritten. But the main thing is that it's too dangerous. The four-eyed man focused on handling the matter. Yes, thank you. Then tomorrow I'll personally deliver it to the courier. Jungkook was angry but helpless. So that's it, right? I'll show you what lightning-fast delivery really means. He slammed his hand down on the table. Is it impossible, or something? The black-haired man hesitated a little. It's possible, but Jungkook, this mission is really tough. Are you seriously planning to take it? Jungkook firmly insisted. What do you mean take it? I just want to handle it in the most reliable way. He raised a doubt. Editing the record is easy. But this is the first time you've asked me for something like this. Are you really that close to that officer that you'd even follow his wishes? He smiled brightly. I am trying to find a way to get close. The black-haired man couldn't help but worry. Jungkook, don't go and lose your life. Jungkook answered with absolute certainty. I won't. He swore to himself. I'll definitely slap him in the face with my own abilities and move one step closer to the subway. Jungkook was not afraid at all. Survival rate. Even if he survived the injury rate, the chances after using up all the medicine he had, the probability of protecting Kyong Hi, and after first aid, the chance of getting Kyong Hi out of the encirclement. Kyong Hi's eyes welled with tears. Thank you, Mr. Courier. Suddenly he woke up. He lay stretched out on the chair but couldn't fall asleep. Jungkook felt extremely exhausted. As expected, this matter just keeps bothering me. The four-eyed man cheerfully replied, Hello. Jungkook went straight to the point. The letter in your hand is the one you're preparing to deliver, right? He looked displeased. I am busy. Please, move aside. Jungkook was not backing down either. I am busy too. He came to do business. I have to deliver the letter to you. The four-eyed man was stunned. What? He strongly objected. Impossible. I already checked the courier's name carefully. Jungkook gave a reason. That person had a sudden accident, so I am taking his place. Leaving the four-eyed man speechless. What? He let the four-eyed man verify it himself. Here, the official order. The authorization has been completed. Everything changed according to the proper procedure, exactly following the principles you worship. Jungkook wanted to prove his abilities. Besides, if I finish 2 days earlier than the deadline, that would make me pretty top tier too, right? When he took the paper, he fell silent. The four-eyed man deliberately pressed on. What's your motive? Pride. He remained strangely calm. I don't understand what you mean. Work is just work. He took the envelope from Jungkook's hand. Then give it to me. He immediately tried to send him away. All right, you've received the letter. Now get lost. The four-eyed man suddenly called out. Woo Jungkook. He paused for a few seconds. Yes? He seemed to waver. If you really finish the delivery within 2 days and make it back here alive, the four-eyed man could only silently hope. Never mind, just please try to stay alive so we can see each other again. Jungkook didn't think about it any further. I can't guarantee that either. He was overjoyed. Finally, a rare core has fallen into my hands. Jungkook ran into a bit of trouble. But the problem is, when it comes to core pieces, I can't examine them myself. Could this thing actually be worthless? Hyo Woong wasn't very pleased. The appraisal expert, Hyo Woong, glanced at it and bluntly said, You really want me to waste my time on this thing? He wanted to confirm it again. Yes, please take a careful look just to be sure. Hyo Woong didn't believe him much. Sure about what? And besides, how would a shipper like you even get a core like this? Jungkook looked serious. I am paying the proper fee. Please just take a look. He immediately started criticizing. This is like asking me to taste garbage to find the flavor of soybean paste. One glance and I can tell it's trash. I am not free. Please leave. He was a little annoyed. I've done business with him for years. Yet he still can't even remember my face. Jungkook was quite understanding. At the age of 70, he's starting to get forgetful. He had no choice but to use a last resort. I have no other option but to bring up that old trick again. The story about his daughter. Hyo Woong immediately paid attention. My daughter? What? What happened to her? Jungkook gave his reason. Did you forget? I was the one who personally delivered the letter to your daughter. He couldn't remember. Wait, really? He recounted the message. The package arrived safely. She also asked me to pass along her thanks to you. Hyo Woong still felt something was off, thanking me for such a small thing. He reluctantly agreed. Fine then, today, I'll appraise it for you for free. Jungkook still paid Hyo Woong, but it'd be strange to take it for free. Here, take some of these bullets as a gift. I appreciate your kindness, but I am not used to taking things for free, because he had to lie. In reality, I've never met Hyo Woong's daughter. Jungkook suddenly remembered. Wait, this old man never had a daughter in the first place. His worsening memory makes him ramble about an imaginary child. He didn't feel guilty about it. As long as I bring up his daughter, I can lead him into doing the appraisal for me. Consider it a win-win, he confidently declared. Just as I expected, this thing is useless. It's the purest item I've ever seen. Jungkook felt puzzled, but in the most negative sense. Hyo Woong's face turned serious. Don't be foolish and touch it. The failure rate is up to 99%, he reminded himself. 99%. I have to be extremely careful when using these cores. Jungkook had long known that only if you were lucky enough to succeed would the core reveal its true form. If he had looked into it, there were several kinds of cores. Some, in these apocalyptic times, some could replace electricity, while others could reconnect the fragmented world. Jungkook answered confidently. But the most valuable one, of course, is the ability core, the one that grants its owner extraordinary powers, but when he put it back into his pocket, most of them have a failure rate above 95%, but better not dream about it. Out of all the good things, I just had to end up with this cursed one. Someone noticed Jungkook's figure. Hey, you courier. He showed clear irritation. I really don't want to run into her at all. Myung judged before knowing the full story. Woo Jungkook, are you using that old man's imaginary daughter again to trick him into doing a free appraisal? Jungkook stated firmly. Dr. Myung, could you stop prying into matters between me and your patient? He insisted he wasn't bullying the elderly. No matter how desperate I get, I would never cheat someone out of payment. I pay fairly. Myung froze. What? She spoke disdainfully. The issue isn't money, it's basic ethics. And you say you're not having any difficulties? Myung had come to collect money. Someone like you asking me for help without paying a single cent? Jungkook had no words. That's right. He had taken a risk to achieve his goal. To snatch that mission from that dark officer, I asked director before anyone else to alter the paperwork, but it turned out the job had already been assigned to another courier. Jungkook stubbornly refused to give up. So I had to lie and say, that guy suddenly had a stomachache so I could take his place. He explained his approach. I was too embarrassed to ask directly, so I just left him a note. Myung finally understood. So, instead of asking properly, you just threw a piece of paper at him? Couldn't you spare a little time to stop by the clinic for a moment? Jungkook thought to himself. This is exactly why I hate having to face her. She repeated once again. I did all of this for you, so you owe me one. Remember to repay the favor someday. Myung's gaze was always as sharp as a dagger. She made a demand. From now on, you'd better behave according to your current status, Mr. Shipper. I don't care how famous a hunter you used to be. Myung pointed at him. But right now you are nothing more than a courier. A power core appeared in the space. Jungkook had to admit that in this chaotic world, there were still people who miraculously survived after risking their lives to use the power core, despite the extremely low success rate. He felt a bit more confident. They survived death and gained special superpowers. Jungkook learned through investigation that those who used this core had the privilege of joining the Hunters Association, specializing in top-secret missions. He realized his advantage, and I myself am one of the survivors who gambled with the power core. Sunlight spread across the space. A voice came from the loudspeaker. The Republic of Korea wishes Woo Jungkook success and a safe return. This operation will conclude in exactly 48 hours. The announcer added a special reminder. Anyone not present on time will be considered dead, and all their assets will be confiscated into the national treasury without negotiation. Jungkook had just stepped outside. He already knew the situation was bad. I arrived later than expected because Dr. Myung kept me for a thorough examination. Jungkook had no choice but to make up his mind. Well then, it was time to run as fast as possible. He looked ahead. This was a special express delivery mission. Jungkook held the information firmly in his hand. The destination was Aaa village in Namdong district, Incheon. He kept commenting that Namdong district now was no different from a deadly arena. The leaders changed so frequently that even the higher-ups couldn't keep up with the situation. Jungkook felt helpless, and to make matters worse, that Aaa village was known for being isolated from the outside world and even required the delivery to be handed directly to the recipient. He had already made his own calculations. Anyway, I finished planning everything 2 days ahead of the deadline. Jungkook longed to be recognized. He had to make those guys stare in shock at his skills. He wasn't completely sure. He hadn't returned to this area for a long time, but if he remembered correctly, there should be a safe shelter nearby. Jungkook fell into confusion. Could it have been flattened by the black pillar? This place used to be one of the few locations that still maintained communication signals with the outside world. He tried to think of a solution. Hoping for reinforcements from nearby areas now was unrealistic, so it seemed he had no choice but to find a detour. Someone suddenly shouted, "That price is way beyond the allowed limit." The man kept criticizing, "Hey kid, say what you're going to do. If you've got food, hand it over and get lost. I don't have time to stand here doing nothing." Jungkook observed carefully. "Hey, aren't those some shippers? Are they arguing with each other?" He quickly noticed that their faces looked familiar. He had probably run into them a few times at the headquarters before. Jungkook finally let out a sigh of relief. "Luckily, I was just looking for someone to ask for directions." The delivery man harshly scolded his colleague. "Are you crazy to believe those guys, Kim? Are you tired of living and looking for a place to be buried?" The older man turned around to leave. "I am heading off first. Do whatever you want." Kim still tried to stop him. "Wait a second, uncle. We should at least ask about the situation first." "Hey, don't make such a grim face." Someone noticed Jungkook approaching. Well, the old customer just left and a new one arrives right away. The mysterious man greeted him warmly. "Hello there, little brother. Which direction are you heading? You look confused." He immediately realized they seemed to be bargaining with the local enforcers of this area. He wasn't asking for much either, just cough up a little coffee money and they would guide the way. "Do you want to cooperate?" Jungkook was still doubtful. Should he trust these guys or not? The mysterious man spoke gently. "Don't show such a worried face. Actually, we are all people who truly love peace." He suddenly calmed down. "Once you leave headquarters, there is only one rule left. Survive. And there is one iron rule that must be engraved in your mind to stay alive." Jungkook had learned one lesson. Anyone who starts preaching about peace is usually full of nonsense. Kim still tried to stop him. "Wait a moment, little brother." He left gloomily. It really was a waste of time. Jungkook trusted his own abilities. Relying on people like that would be slower than finding the way himself. The older man praised him endlessly. "Your body looks pretty solid, young man." He was utterly confused. What the heck? When did this old man suddenly appear? The old delivery man hurriedly urged him. "Good. You meet the standard. Follow me." The kind old man offered help. "Why are you still standing there blankly? Aren't you going to set off?" Jungkook was a little puzzled. "Huh, so where are you actually planning to deliver this to?" The old delivery man stated firmly. "The same place as you, of course." Jungkook found it hard to believe. "Wait, how do you know where I am going and say it's the same place?" The old man confidently named the destination. At this point, where else could it be besides Busan? Jungkook felt helpless. "But my destination is Incheon." The old delivery man immediately changed his mind. "Well then, I am also planning to go to Incheon." Jungkook became confused. "What?" The old man tried to push Jungkook along. "All right, get moving." For some reason, he turned his head to look behind him. Jungkook was very curious. "Uncle, where were those guys earlier trying to trick us into going?" The old man knew the situation well. "Those guys are just drifters around this area. I heard they've sealed off the whole region. What a bunch of bastards." He pretended not to believe it. "That may be true, but how do you know about me? What makes you so sure about where I need to go?" The old delivery man trusted his own judgment. It's all thanks to instinct. Jungkook began to regard him more highly. This instinctive old man was clearly no ordinary person. He went along with the old delivery man. All right then, just follow your instincts. The old man wanted to help Jungkook. Didn't I say I'd go with you to Incheon? He wanted to experience things himself. I haven't agreed to that yet. The old delivery man didn't seem to care much. That's fine, just follow me. Jungkook kept feeling uneasy. The killing aura of this man was truly frightening, completely different from that old director Baliblab. The old man wanted to know Jungkook's identity. Hey kid, what's your name? He didn't hide it. Woo Jungkook. The old delivery man was surprised. Woo Jungkook? So we're from the same clan, brother. The old man kept talking non-stop. People with the Wu surname all originate from Danyang, so let's just consider ourselves family. One look at this face and you can tell it's pure Wu blood. Let's go, brother. Didn't I say we were heading to Busan earlier? Jungkook was about to lose his patience. Could you please stay quiet for a moment? And my destination is Incheon. Actually, I agreed to let this old man come along for my own reasons. The old delivery man finally asked a proper question. Hey, which area are you heading to? He answered honestly. AAA village. This is a gamble I have considered very carefully. The old man seemed very knowledgeable. That place apparently never receives any mail from the outside. You're unlucky, brother. Jungkook insisted on finishing it. It was the mission assigned to him, so no matter what he had to reach that place once. The old delivery man teased him whenever he could. That's quite a sense of responsibility. I am starting to like you. He grew even more suspicious. The man adjusted his walking pace to match his with millimeter precision. Jungkook analyzed carefully. Thinking back, the man had immediately rejected those guys' offer and chose to head into this dangerous place himself. Perhaps he had sensed their scheme just as Jungkook suspected. He came up with several theories. Moreover, the man had approached him so naturally, without making a single sound. Was he deliberately helping him escape from those robbers? Or simply protecting himself? Though he couldn't be sure, this man was definitely a top-tier expert. The old delivery man pointed to the sky. The sun is about to go to sleep, brother. Jungkook understood what he meant. Let's go into that building and rest for a bit. Sunlight shone onto the old building. He couldn't relax. Had the man really fallen asleep? Or was he just pretending? Jungkook noticed sharply that the man still held tightly onto his bag. There must definitely be something inside for self-defense. He allowed himself to rest. He'll take a nap for about 30 minutes, and then wake up to switch guard duty. Jungkook fell asleep sitting after walking a long distance. He suddenly jolted awake and opened his eyes. The old delivery man was holding a gun in his hand. Unexpectedly, the two of them pointed their guns at each other. The old man had to admit, "Your instincts are pretty good, brother." Jungkook threatened. If it were someone else, they would have been long dead already. Go ahead and use that.